reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus and his disciples left for the village around Caesarea Philippi. On the way he put this question to his disciples: "Who do people say I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptist," they said, "others Elijah, others again one of the prophets. But you," he said, "who do you say I am?" Peter spoke up and said to him, "You are the Christ." And he gave them strict orders not to tell anyone about him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man was destined to suffer grievously, to be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and to be put to death, and after 3 days to rise again. And he said this all quite openly. Then taking him aside, Peter started to remonstrate with him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said to him, "Get behind me, Satan, because the way you think is not God's way, but man's." He called the people and his disciples to him, and he said, "If anyone wants to be a follower of mine, let them renounce themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For anyone who wants to save their life will lose it. But anyone who loses their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." Once again, we find Jesus with his disciples visiting the villages around Caesarea Philippi, and Jesus puts himself in a rather interesting situation because rather than perhaps performing a miracle, Jesus is asking his own disciples, "Who do others say I am?" And it's Peter that once again takes this lead role. "You are the Christ." Peter, the spokesman for the disciples, once again takes up that leader's role. And after Jesus had began telling them that he was going to suffer, he was going to be rejected, he was going to be put to death, and he was going to rise again, it's as if Peter couldn't handle what was going to happen to Jesus. And so he tells Jesus that this would not be happening to him if he had his way. And Jesus is saying to Peter, and quite strongly, that this is not your way, this is God's way. One of the things we need to remember on many occasions in life is that some of the things which we are asked to embrace, some of the crosses we're asked to carry, are crosses which have been perhaps given to us for one reason or another. And we find it very difficult sometimes to see the crosses that others carry, whether that be because of sickness or because of things that happen to them. We find that particularly difficult, and I think it's because we find ourselves very helpless. We find ourselves particularly helpless when someone that we love is suffering. And so I think this gospel today reminds us that at times we do face that situation of being helpless, and we need to be able to support others in the best way we can. We can't take away the illness, or we can't take away the cross that they carry, but we can support them. God's way of saving his world was to send Jesus, the Son of the second person of the Trinity. Sent him to be one like us. He would suffer and die for our sin. And it's as if Peter cannot cope with the fact that Jesus, the Jesus that they loved so much, the Jesus that had become such a friend to them, It's as if he couldn't cope with the fact that he was going to suffer. And so we reflect on this gospel, we reflect on the challenges and the crosses that perhaps come into our lives and the lives of people that we love, and we ask God to give us the grace to be able to support each other and to accept those crosses just as Jesus accepted his.